Hi and welcome to another tutorial. In today's lesson we'll learn how to recreate this cool looking interactive dashboard using Excel. So anyways guys, let's jump in. So in order to create something like this, we first need some data. So I'm just going to download a data set from online. Here is an example of a data set that I've downloaded from Kaggle, and it's all about bike sales. And once I'm happy with the data set, all I need to do is download that file and open up the CSV inside of Excel. This is what the CSV looks like in Excel. And what we're going to do is we are going to create a new document and take all this data and copy it to the new document. So here we are in a new Excel document. All I've done is I've renamed these sheets. I've got one sheet for dashboard, and then I've just copy and pasted all of my CSV file for the data into a data sheet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the dashboard and just kind of set it up a little bit just so that I can get started with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a small blue box just like that. I'm going to import my logo and put it in the top left hand corner. Now that I've got my logo, I'm just going to import some icons over here. And once you have that, then I'm just going to add a title. So I'm just going to call this, and cool. So now once I have that, I've got my logo, I've got some icons. I'm just going to turn these into links. So to do that, all you have to do is just click on this, and then if you go to hyperlink, and then you can add a link in here. So for example, if I use this email address, just press OK. Now when I hover over that, that will be a link. If you're going to make a tutorial or something, you can always turn this into a link to the YouTube tutorial. That will be good to show how to actually use your dashboard. But other than that, now let's start to work on the actual data. So here we have the data, and the first thing that we need to do is maybe you might need to clean up some of these data sets. Maybe there's a little bit of incorrect spelling, or there's values that you don't want, you can get rid of them. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn that into a table. So if I click on insert, go to table, highlight all of my data, now it looks like it's formatted into a table, and that looks really good. But now what we need to do is we need to create pivot charts. So in order to do this, what we need to do is we need to again go to insert, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a pivot table, and we're going to select all of this data here. So again, I'm just going to press OK, and now we're in the pivot table, and this will allow us to create the pivot chart. So in order to do that, you have on the right hand side all of the fields that came from the data set. And then what you can do with these pivot tables is you can put the information in how you want to display it. So for example, for this first chart, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the store location as my rows. And so there I have Chicago, Houston, all the cities over there. I'm going to use the category of the bike. So the bike model, I'm going to put down that as my columns over here. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the price in my values just like that. So now I've successfully created this pivot table, and now I can go and create a pivot chart. So before we do that, the first thing that we need to do is we just need to format this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back home. Because this is all money values, I'm going to change it to currency. If you want to change the decimal points, you can do so like that. The other thing that I want to do is I want to click on this grand total, and I want to sort that from largest to smallest. So you can see that in New York, when you combine all their sales together, they have the largest grand total. And also I'm going to do it by category as well. So if I right click and go from largest to smallest, you can see that the BMX has the most sales. So that looks pretty cool. And now what we need to do is we need to create the chart. So what I'm going to do is if I go into pivot table analyze, and then if I go into pivot chart, all right, it creates a chart for me. And that chart looks pretty good, but there are a few things missing from here. The first thing is that it's missing a title. So we're gonna have to add a title, but I don't want a bar chart like that. And so what I can do is I can go and change the chart type. If I still want a column graph, but I want a stacked column graph, which just makes it a little bit easier to understand all the information, I think that looks pretty cool like that. Then if you want to add some other things to this, so for example, if you go into design, you can add chart elements here. So for example, if every chart will need a title. So this is now going to be called sales by location and type. Please make sure that you use meaningful names, and then once you have that title, you can rename that sheet and call it exactly what you had there. So sales by location and type. Cool. Now, if you want to do anything else with this, you can always go back into design. You can have a look at some quick layout options if you like any of those, or you can do it manually. For example, if you want to get rid of the legend, or if you want to add, grid lines, things like that. Totally up to you, but please explore this section over here. So now what we need to do is we need to press Command C or Control C to copy this and take it to our dashboard page. So now all I'm going to do is just paste that onto this document and then organize it to wherever I want. So I'm probably going to leave it roughly around there. Then I'm going to put another chart over here and some slices over here and maybe a total at the bottom. So for a new pivot chart, we are going to go back to our data and we are going to click on our table, and then we're going to repeat the process again. Insert pivot table. We're going to select all of our data. It creates a new sheet, and now we can do something else and search for other variations of data. So this time what I'm going to look for is I'm going to be using the date. All right, so now the date is all organized nicely for me in quarters and things like that, but you know what, I don't want quarters, so I'm going to get rid of that. I just want the year and the month. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the price. So now once you put the price in, then what I need to do is I need to format that. So that's a currency value. And you can see in 2020, all right, the sum of all the price was 54 million. So now once you have made that a currency, then what we need to do is we need to turn this into a graph. So again, if we go up to pivot table analyze, and then if we go into a pivot chart, and now we have a bar chart of the total number of sales for the year. And so you can change that to whatever you like. If you want it as a line graph, that's cool. Or if you want to change it to perhaps a 2D graph like this, where you have the years on this side and you have the values over here. Now, I don't want the legend over there, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that. And then I'm going to rename that title. So we're going to say total sales by year. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that and I'm going to rename this sheet. And now we have total sales by year. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to copy this, go back to our data dashboard, and then I'm just going to paste it in there. Something like that. So I can move this stuff around, perhaps maybe get to the end over there. And now I've got two graphs ready to go on my data dashboard. We'll worry about the alignment and we'll fix up the design a little bit later. So let's go and do another graph over here. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to go to data, we're going to go to insert, and we're going to go to pivot table, press OK. So now what we are going to do is we are going to look for more data. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the payment method. So I'm going to find out how many people are using Apple Pay, etc., cards and all that to pay for their purchases. So again, I've got the payment method by rows, and then what I need is the price over here. So this is going to be all of the sales that those payment types have received. So there we have, you know, like all the values there. And if you want, you can always sort that out from largest to smallest. And then all we need to do is click on the table, go to pivot table analyze, go to the pivot chart, and now we have a chart just like that. So again, now what we need to do is we need to change the heading. All right, so this is going to be sales by payment type. I'm going to copy that and I'm just going to rename this sheet. Cool. So now I don't want the legend over there, and I'm pretty happy with that. But if I want to follow the other table design, I'll just keep it like this. And you don't want the numbers to kind of overlap. So I'm just gonna make sure that they don't overlap, just like that. And then once I'm happy with my chart, you know, then what I can do is just press Command C to copy that and then take it to my dashboard. Cool, so now the dashboard is looking pretty good. The last chart that I added in here was a male and female chart. So again, that's pretty easy to do. We just go to the data, we click on Insert, Pivot Table, we'll select all of our data, and then what we are going to do is we are going to get customer gender. They are going to be the rows, and then we are going to get the quantity. And so now once we have that data, we're just going to format that a little bit nicer. So if I just come over here to the comma style, now it just formats it just like the currency, but it's not a currency. So now what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to go to pivot table analyze, add my pivot chart, and this time I do not want a column chart. I want a, let's say, a donut chart. And now I'm going to rename that. That's going to be sales by gender. And then all I have to do is just rename that sheet and call that sales by gender. And now we have that as well to go. So I'm going to press, or I'm going to copy that and put that into my dashboard. Cool. So now that I have all of that, now, honestly, you can keep on going. You can just keep adding more charts and things like that. But to make this interactive, what we need to do is we need to add some slices. So I'll show you how to actually do that. So let's say I'm going to be using this table to create the slices. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the table, go to Insert, and then you have these two options over here. You have a timeline and you have a slicer. So I'm just going to click on that timeline. I'm going to set it to the date. And now I have a slicer for the date over there. So it will have all of my years in there just like that. And you can already see that just by clicking on these things, it's actually kind of changing the data as well. But we'll fix that up in a minute. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the table again. We're going to go to Insert, and this time we are going to go to Slicer. And what we're going to do is we are going to do a similar thing, but this time what we want is we want slices by store location and by the different models of bikes. So now if I put this over here and I just make it a little bit bigger, now I have all of these options over here and I can choose what I want to search for. And same with the bike model over here. If I only want to look at e-bikes, I can have a look at that. So that is looking pretty cool. And we're just going to add one more thing to it before we fix up the design. Now you can see here that when you do click on these things, this chart is moving, but not everything else is moving. So to fix that up, what we need to do is we need to right click on this, go to report connections. And then what we need to do is we need to add all of the other pivot tables that you want to be updated by these slices. So basically I'm going to make sure that all of them are up to date, and I've checked on all of them. And now when you go over here, you can actually see what is actually happening. So folding bikes, you can see that, you know, the minimum amount of people paid by, you know, PayPal, and you can see the total sales for the year 2024, and you can go into the month if you want, or you can go and look at it as a total year thing as well. So you can change it by, you know, years if you want, just 2023 sales, or 2022 and 2023, etc. So the last thing that I insert down here was a total sales little box. So to do that, I went to insert, I went to shapes, I grabbed the rounded rectangle and I just drew a little rounded rectangle in there just like that. And then what I need to do is I need to go to my data tab, and basically I just need to create a new total sales kind of cell over here, and that's pretty easy. It's just equal sum. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all of my sales. And once you have that value, you can then just change it to currency. Now, you can always do that in a pivot chart if you want, but look, I just want that value so I can just dump it into my dashboard. Once I'm in my dashboard, all I need to do is go up to equals and then go to my data tab and then just click on that. And then if I press enter, now you can see that I have my value there. So I'm just going to rename it total sales. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that font to Y and make it bold. And then I can, rearrange it just like that. So cool. So now that we have our base for our dashboard, now we just have to make it look a little bit nicer. So now that I have all of that, then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to move everything around. So I'm going to play around with some of the align tools. So if I click on the things that I want to align, and then if I go into shape format, I can go to align, I can align it to the left. It also would be a good idea to make things the same size. So if my width is going to be, 3.42 inches, then I can go to my next shape and I can just change all the values just so they are the same. So cool, so they're the same. I'm just gonna get rid of this white space over there. Now, if you don't want the headings on here, you can always go into the slicer settings and you can take off the display header, so that can save you some space. Same with the bike models. All you have to do is just go into the slicer settings and then just turn off the header. And so now I can just shift that up into there. I should align it again. And then what we can do is we can just drag this down to make that fit. And then we can just fit everything else on this side as well. So we'll have to drag this up slightly. And if you hold Option, it does snap to wherever your things are. So that's a pretty useful function. So for example, if I do that, and then if I just move that up there and I hold Option and bring that down, and then I also hold Option, bring that down, and I hold Option and bring that down, just like that. So now that we've organized everything, it looks pretty decent. What we can do is go back to our view and take off the grid lines and take off the headings, and now it looks a little bit better. And then the final thing that we can do in here is if we go into page layout, you have a whole section on themes, and themes are pretty cool because it changes the fonts, it changes the whatever really on your document. So go and have a look at which designs that you like. I'm going to keep something like that, but sometimes you will have to reorganize some of your settings in case the formatting changes things. The other thing I want to show you is, again, if you go into your design, there are different kind of template designs as well. So you can go and play around with some of those settings to give you a different look. But also be mindful that sometimes it does change some of the elements on there. So for example, if you didn't want the legend or something like that, you can always go back in here and change it as well. So experiment with that and have a look at how that looks. But that's pretty much how you would create an interactive dashboard using Microsoft Excel. So the cool thing is that it is dynamic and you can change all these values. You can change the year if you only want to look at 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, etc. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this tutorial. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.